quick example of what we will be covering. We're going to make sure that our character is able to move in the three-dimensional space, and we're also going to add a jump function to them as well. So to get started, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new C# script. Real important organization, make sure in Assets you have a folder named Scripts, and I'm going to open that up and I'm going to create a new C# script. And I usually like to call my scripts something that's very, very obvious. If it has anything to do with the player, I'll say that as player. And then I'm also going to add what it's doing. So I'm just going to say player move. Press enter. And what should happen is it should compile the script, and then I'm going to actually open it right afterward once this is all done. And a real important other thing is whenever you're naming any sort of script, you're going to want to Pascal case it, which means uppercase the first letter and each subsequent letter of a different word. Make sure there are no spaces inside of your script. If there are any spaces inside your file name, it will not work. So now that it is created, I'm going to go ahead and open it up. There it is. And getting started, again, this has to match this name, which it does, so I'm good on that. I always start from scratch, and I'm going to add a couple of instance variables. And right here, I'm going to add some variables that I know I'm going to need. First of all, I'm going to make sure that these variables are accessible from the properties. And to do that, I need to write serialized field before I write what type of variable it is. I want private access. I do not want to make it public. A lot of tutorials are going to show you public, but you don't generally want all your variables to be public. It's actually very, very bad coding practice. And if it's public, other scripts can attach themselves to it or use that variable, and again, not what I'm going for. So serialized field, private, and I'm going to add a couple of floats. One of them I'm going to call move speed, and all of my variables I always camel case, which is a lowercase in the beginning. And since it's a serialized field, I'm able to change this, but how about I just start off at 5F. I'm going to make a second serialized field, which will be jump force. And how about I make that 6F? Again, these things can be changed very quickly and on the fly with the serialized field. And then next of all, I know in order to add forces, I'm going to need a rigid body. This is something that I'm not going to manipulate. I'm just going to find with my script. So to make it as simple as possible, I'll create a variable called rigid body. And then I know I'm also going to need a couple of other variables with the way I want to write the script. I'm going to do two floats, one of which I'm going to call X movement, and the other one I'm going to call Z movement. And the reason why X and Z instead of X and Y is the way Unity is set up, the up and down position or my jump position is going to be my Y. My forward and backward are Z. I know it's a little bit different than what people are used to when they look at the three-dimensional plane. Usually Z is up and down, but Unity decided to switch it up, mainly due to the fact that they started out 2D, and jumping up and down on the Y-axis makes the most sense. So, okay, we've got that, and then those will be for moving. I'm going to add two other variables. These will be Booleans, and one of them will be called isJumping, and the other one will be called isGrounded. All right, now I have all of my variables. As far as I know, I will not need any additional ones, but let's go ahead and get started with our methods. So our first method we're going to use is start. This one is pre-built into Unity, and it always happens once the game starts. Or it's really once the scene starts. But anything that has start in it, this will happen right away. And the first thing I want to happen is I want to get the rigid body. Important thing for this line of code is the rigid body has to be in the same spot as this script. Otherwise, this will give me an error. That's all I'm going to need for start. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the update function. And the update function, this will run at the frame rate. So this is going to run at different speeds on different computers. Now, I really like using the update function for all of my input values, but for my movement values, I don't like using update, mainly due to the fact that if I used update, it's going to run at a different speed on a different computer if it has a different FPS. So update, again, is just for my input values. So right here is where I'm going to add all of my inputs. And I'm going to make these as simple as possible. This is a way that I like to show students that are brand new to Unity. I'm going to use the input class, and what I'm going to get is get key, key code, and then whatever key I'm looking for. I'm going to control my player with WASD, and I'm also going to control my player with up and down arrows. Now, Unity has some built-in axial systems which make this a little bit easier. However, I like showing this at first because then I can get the key for anything I really want to do. So say, for example, I want to reset the game. I could say if you got the key R, then reset the scene. There's a lot of extra stuff that I can do once I know how to get keys. And in this situation, okay, if they're, whoops, sorry, not space, up arrow. Yep. Okay, if I'm going up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change Z movement. And I'm just going to make that 1F. You'll see why in just a little bit. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing with an else if. And this one, I'm going to go S and down arrow. And if those are the cases, if I'm going down, then I want Z movement to be negative. Now, an important thing right here is, and the reason why I did like the if, else if, is because if I'm not pressing W or S, I want Z movement to stay at 0. If I don't do that, once my player is moving, they're not going to stop moving the way I'm going to write the script. So I'm just going to add a simple else. Z movement equals 0. And then all I'm going to do for the left and right motion is I'm going to copy this and do the exact same thing with A and D and left arrow and right arrow. And instead of Z movement, it will be X movement. So copy and paste. This will be the input for left and right. And if I press A, or the left arrow, then the X movement would be -1. And if I press D, or the right arrow, then the X movement will be +1. Otherwise, make the X movement 0. So perfect. That's actually all I need for my forward, backward, left, and right commands. Now, next thing for movement. As I mentioned before, I do not like putting movement inside of my update function. I'm going to use, instead of update, fixed update. Private void fixed update. So this will run at a fixed speed. I believe it's usually 50 frames per second. I could be wrong on that, but I do know the fixed update is changeable. So that being said, I want to control how fast things move. And all right, let me start off with like just some simple movement. First of all, in order to move the player, I'm going to need to apply a force to the rigid body. So I'm going to write RB for the rigid body, which I got up here. And then I'm going to write add force, and then in parentheses, the thing that it's looking for is a vector. So it's looking for a direction and a magnitude of the force. To get the direction, it's just going to be whatever my x movement is for the x. Since this is not where I'm going to apply the jump, I'm going to set y to 0f, and then z movement for the z. And right now, if I have my vector 3 set up this way, I'm going to encounter a little error in a sense that if I'm going diagonally, the magnitude is going to be the hypotenuse of these two values added to each other. So to fix that, I'm going to write dot normalized. And very simply put, that's going to prevent me from moving faster when I go diagonally. I want to multiply this by the move speed. And that is the variable that I'm going to edit. And to make sure this always runs the exact same speed on every single computer, I'm going to multiply that by time delta time. And what that does is it makes it move this fast per second, which is needed so that I'm not dependent on a frame rate at all. And then final thing I'm going to do for adding the force is I can say what type of force I'm going to add. Specifically for this, I want it to be a velocity change because I want the change to be consistent. So that is going to be my new force mode. And right now, with everything I have, if I attach this to the player, first of all, I do want to script save it. But if I attach this script to the player and the player also has a rigid body attached, then this should work for moving back, forth, left, and right. This would be a good time to test that, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into my game, and I'm going to attach that script, make sure that a rigid body is attached as well. So go onto my player, and I'm going to remove the old script I had. But okay, I've clicked on my player. On my player, I do have a rigid body. I also have a sphere collider. And to add the script, there's a few ways I could do it. I could search for it by clicking Add Component, but an easier way is just dragging this over on. I don't know if it's easier, but it's just a different way. And if I press play, then again, I should be able to move forward, backward, left, and right. Sure enough, I can. I don't have a jump programmed yet, but I am a good portion of the way there. So next, let's go ahead and add that jump command. I'm going to get back into this script, and to add jump, I'm going to do a couple of things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write if input.getKey keycode dot space, because I'm going to make my space bar the jump command. Then what I will do is set is jumping to true. And then inside my fixed update, I can just write if is jumping. Then I want to add a force in the up direction. So to do that, I'm going to write RB add force the same way I did for moving the player. And inside of add force, easy way to look at it is it wants, like this is one of the possible ways to add it, but like it's looking for a direction, so, well, easy way to do that, vector 3 up. So I want the force to be in the up direction. And I'm just going to multiply that by the jump force. And then the only big change I'm going to do is force mode. Instead of a constant velocity change, I want this to be an impulse. And what impulse force is going to do is it's going to apply a large force right at the beginning and then not apply the force anymore. Really exactly what you would do when you're jumping. I would do this exact same thing if I were doing a trajectory for some sort of projectile. All right, and now I'm going to fix a problem that I know is going to happen right now. The problem is okay, there's a couple of problems. One is if I hold down on the key, then it's going to keep making is jumping true, and I'm just going to keep flying. Actually, I'm not going to even stop jumping. So after that force is applied, I'm going to want to change is jumping to false. And another thing I want to add right now is I only want to be able to jump if I'm on the ground. Because right now, oh yeah, and then also this, I'm sorry. Since I'm using get key, it's going to be checking as long as the key is pressed. If I only want this to trigger once the key is pressed down or in the down position, I just write is key down. So this will trigger one time. It will not spam if I'm holding down on the key, like I will with these ones. I actually want to keep moving if I'm holding down the key on these ones, but this one I only want to press once. And final thing is I'm able to jump as much as I want, so I can keep jumping while I'm in the air at the moment. I only want to jump if I'm on the ground. So there's an easy way to do that, or check if I'm on the ground. First of all right, I'm going to make this only work if my player is grounded and I've pressed the spacebar. Now, to check if my player is grounded, I'm going to do this right here. Is grounded equals physics. This is one way to check if you're on the ground, but I'm going to do a physics raycast. And inside of the physics raycast, it's looking for a few things. First of all, it's looking for a starting position. It's looking for a direction. And then I can add an extra element, which is how far I want that raycast to go. So for this raycast, what I want is I want it to happen from the middle of my player. So in order to do that, I'm going to write transform.position. That transform is the player's current location. Position is going to be like the 0, 0, 0, or center. And the direction I want this to just check down. So vector3.down. And then how far do I want it? Well, that kind of depends. Right now, looking at my object, that player is a size of 1. Which means that my ground check has to be, and it starts at the beginning. So that ground check has to be greater than 0.5. How about I make it 0.6? If by any chance this doesn't work, you can make this value larger. Or, of course, shrink your player. Really just make this value larger. And that is it. What this will return is whether or not it actually sees something. If it sees something, is grounded will be true. If not, it will be false. And if it's true and I press the space bar, then I'm able to jump. That is absolutely everything I need. So I do need to save this file before I actually run the script. Now, if I go into that project and click run, right now I'm able to move left and right, and if I press the space bar, sure enough, I'm able to jump. Awesome. And going all the way back to when we did that serialized field, nice things about it, if I want to slow down my movement speed, I could. If I want to increase my jump force, I can. So now I jump way faster and move way slower. But a little important thing to know is once I stop, if I do any sort of changes while the game is running, that was a big jump. But if I do any sort of changes while the game is running, then they will not save. So once I stop the game, it goes back to what it was defaulted to. But I can change it right here. And now it will be permanently changed. Well, until I move it. But that is everything for this video. Hope it was nice and easy for you to give you a little valuable send-off. I think what I'm going to do is, I don't know if you guys will be able to see all this. I was hoping I could show you guys the entire code in one shot. There it is. It's not exceptionally big, but in case you missed anything, go ahead and look back over this. And of course, contact me if you have any questions. Happy coding, guys. Hope this was informative. Have lots of fun.